You are watching Beyond the News. Like, comment, and subscribe.
Baltasar Engonga's Scandal with 400 Women, an unsettling look at consent, power, and privacy in Equatorial Guinea, by Kevin Blair, Beyond the News.
Como he explicado antes, fui el primer director general que ostentaba el cargo fusionar a las dos direcciones. Entonces hay viajes que son de bancas, hay viajes que normalmente son de seguros. Entonces a veces el proceso de un libramiento para un viaje puntual de la dirección.
The scandal involving Baltasar Engonga, the director of Equatorial Guinea's National Financial Investigation Agency, ANF, has escalated beyond simple outrage to a full-blown national crisis. Engonga allegedly recorded explicit encounters with over 400 women, many of whom are reportedly wives of prominent officials. To make matters even more unsettling, reports reveal that several of these women were visibly aware of the camera, looking directly into it, raising difficult questions about consent, coercion, and complicity within this far-reaching scandal. The revelation that many women appeared to know they were being recorded has added a new layer of complexity. For some, this acknowledgement might indicate that they felt compelled to comply, fearing the social or professional repercussions of refusing Engonga, or that they were even led to believe the recordings would remain private. Others might have perceived their cooperation as a calculated decision, where maintaining a cordial relationship with a high-ranking official could offer advantages. Experts in behavioral psychology argue that such a dynamic, where women look directly at the camera, could signify awareness without genuine consent. In relationships where power imbalances are present, consent can become ambiguous, clouded by the perceived benefits or pressures associated with cooperation. This raises serious questions about whether Engonga exploited the women's perceived willingness or manipulated their trust, blurring the line between willing participation and coercive influence. The scandal reveals how dangerous power can be in shaping consent and behavior. Engonga's alleged actions suggest a personality driven by dominance, control, and validation far beyond his professional achievements. As a top government official, he already wielded significant influence. However, his choice to record encounters with 400 women, including the spouses of high-profile officials, hints at a deep-seated need to exert power over his private interactions. This created a network of influence over women who may have viewed him as a benefactor, protector, or career gateway, which he appears to have manipulated to construct a hidden empire of control. His alleged actions underscore a type of psychological manipulation that thrives on authority and secrecy, leading psychologists to speculate that this behavior may stem from a desire for validation. Such actions often reveal a compulsion to continually assert one's power, extending beyond public image into private affairs, as each interaction serves to reinforce their self-worth and maintain control. In response to the scandal, Vice President Teodoro Nguema Mangwe has ordered the installation of surveillance cameras in all government offices, citing a need for ethical oversight. Reactions to this move have been mixed, with some viewing it as a necessary preventive measure, while others see it as an overreach that could endanger privacy further. For many, however, the bigger question is how Engonga's actions went unchecked for so long. Were there no earlier signs of his behavior, or was his position powerful enough to protect him? The apparent lack of regulatory checks in Equatorial Guinea's leadership suggests that the scandal may be symptomatic of broader structural issues within the government's oversight mechanisms. Now, many citizens and activists are calling for a comprehensive review of transparency policies and oversight of all government officials to prevent such abuses in the future. The number of women involved, 400, has come to symbolize the scandal's shocking scale and become a damning reflection of Equatorial Guinea's leadership culture. For Equatorial Guinea, which has already been under scrutiny for governance concerns, this scandal deals a severe blow to the nation's reputation and moral standing. The scandal brings to light troubling questions about ethics within leadership, creating international embarrassment that further darkens the nation's public image. Both citizens and international observers are watching closely to see how Equatorial Guinea will address not only Ngonga's transgressions, but also the deeper underlying issues within the leadership system that allowed such a betrayal to unfold. Ngonga's story and the scandal surrounding his interactions with 400 women transcend a typical political headline, acting as a potent reminder of the widespread impact of unregulated power. For the women involved, many of whom might have thought their interactions were private, the public exposure is a source of shame and personal turmoil. This case prompts essential questions about the limits of authority and the accountability mechanisms that should protect people from exploitation, regardless of rank. The true legacy of this scandal lies in its potential to serve as a catalyst for change, one that could shape the ethical and social framework of Equatorial Guinea for years to come.
Okay, so get this. 400 women's secret recordings and a top government official in Equatorial Guinea. This isn't just another headline. It's a deep dive into some seriously murky waters. We're talking about power consent and accountability, or the lack thereof.
Yeah, and I think what's fascinating here is the sheer scale of it all, you know? This isn't just a personal indiscretion, this suggests a systemic issue, maybe even a culture of manipulation.
Right, and our source. Beyond the News article by Kevin Blair calls it an unsettling look at consent, power, and privacy in Equatorial Guinea. The central figure is Baltasar Engonga. He is the director of the National Financial Investigation Agency. So that's a position with serious clout, right?
Absolutely. I mean, imagine the financial and political influence that someone in that position wields.
Right, and he allegedly used that influence to engage in these encounters,
Yeah.
often with women who are already married to other high-ranking officials, hundreds of them.
Which adds a whole other layer to the power dynamics, right? I mean, these women were already connected to influential figures. So what does that tell us about the allure of Ngonga's position?
That's what I find so perplexing. The article mentions that many of these women were aware of the camera, even looking directly into it. It's like, why? If they already have access to power through their husbands, then what's the motivation?
Well, it forces us to consider the complexities of consent, particularly within a system where power seems to be the currency, you know? Can we assume genuine consent when someone like Ngonga is involved?
I mean, even if they seemed okay with it on the surface, who knows what was happening behind the scenes? What kind of pressure or manipulation might have been at play?
Exactly, and the source cites expert opinions suggesting that this direct eye contact with the camera, could be a sign of awareness, but not necessarily consent. Maybe it was a sense of obligation or fear of the potential consequences if they refused.
So it's less about desire and more about navigating a system where saying no to someone like Engonga might have serious repercussions.
Possibly. I mean, that's the unsettling part. We have to ask ourselves, was this a genuine expression of agency? Or were these women trapped in a web of power they couldn't escape?
It's like a psychological thriller. Honestly, 400 women. It's hard to fathom the motivation behind such a massive operation. What was Engonga hoping to achieve?
Well, the source suggests his actions might point to a need for dominance control, maybe even a warped sense of validation. He already held a position of authority. This seems to go beyond that.
Almost like he needed to create this hidden empire, this network of influence built on what? Compromise, fear.
Yeah, it speaks to a desire to exert power beyond the professional realm, right? And the secrecy surrounding it all only adds to the sense of manipulation and potential coercion. We're talking about a system where the lines between consent and coercion become incredibly blurry.
Okay, so you've got this deeply unsettling picture of power dynamics and potential manipulation. But here's the question that keeps nagging at me. How did this go on for so long without anyone noticing? Were there no checks and balances in place?
That's a crucial point. I mean, the article highlights a lack of accountability that's frankly alarming. It makes you wonder about the effectiveness of Equatorial Guinea's oversight, especially within their leadership.
Yeah, it's almost like a culture of silence,
Yeah.
that enabled this behavior to continue unchecked for so long.
Exactly. And it's not unique to Equatorial Guinea. Think about cases of abuse of power we've seen in corporations, Hollywood. Even within families, power dynamics can distort perceptions of what's acceptable.
Right. It's easy to think this wouldn't happen here. But the reality is that these power dynamics exist everywhere. It makes you question your own workplace, your own relationships.
Precisely. And the more those power structures remain unchallenged, the more vulnerable people become. That's why transparency and accountability are so crucial. We need systems that encourage reporting, protect whistleblowers, and ensure consequences for those who abuse their positions.
Yeah, but that's easier said than done right, especially in a place like Equatorial Guinea, where the article suggests a culture of silence around these issues. How do you break through that?
It requires a systemic shift, a willingness to challenge the status quo, to demand better from those in power. And crucially, it requires empowering individuals to recognize and speak out against abuses, even when it feels risky.
This whole thing reminds me of the hashtag #MeToo movement. It took immense courage for women to come forward and break the silence around harassment and assault. Even then, they faced backlash.
That's a perfect example of how deeply ingrained these power dynamics can be, right? And it shows that change requires speaking truth to power, even when it's uncomfortable. But those voices are essential for creating lasting change.
So what are the concrete steps? How do we move from awareness to action?
It starts with education. Understanding the subtle ways power imbalances manifest, recognizing the red flags. Then it's about creating safe spaces for reporting, establishing clear consequences for abusers, and fostering a culture where speaking up is encouraged, not punished.
We've been focusing on the systemic issues, but I want to go back to those women for a moment. The article mentioned that many were married to other powerful figures. It makes the situation even more complex.
Absolutely. It challenges our assumptions about motivation, right? If they already had access to power through their husbands, why engage with Engonga? Were they seeking something more? Were they pressured?
It's such a tangled web. It makes you wonder what those women were thinking, what their individual stories are.
Yeah, we might never know the full extent of their experiences. But it's a stark reminder that within these power dynamics, individuals can be both complicit and victims simultaneously.
And the fact that this went undetected for so long is terrifying. How many other situations like this are happening right now, completely under the radar?
It's a sobering thought, and it underscores the urgency of addressing these issues head-on. We can't be complacent. We need to be actively challenging power imbalances wherever we see them.
This deep dive has been incredibly eye-opening, It's made me think critically about power structures in my own life.
Yeah.
And how I can contribute to a more just world.
That's the goal, isn't it? To move from understanding the problem to actively seeking solutions. And that starts with each of us.
This whole thing feels like a wake-up call, not just for Equatorial Guinea, but for all of us. It's easy to distance ourselves from a scandal in another country. But this goes beyond geography.
Yeah, it does. It exposes a fundamental truth about power, Left unchecked, it can corrupt individuals and institutions alike. We can't just assume people in authority will always do the right thing.
Right. The article really emphasizes the damage to Equatorial Guinea's reputation. So what are the real-world consequences of that?
Well, the impact can be far-reaching. Think about foreign investment drying up, diplomatic relations strained, maybe even international sanctions. This scandal could have a ripple effect on their economy and global standing.
And internally, what about the people of Equatorial Guinea?
Imagine the erosion of public trust, This fosters anger, resentment, a sense of betrayal. Rebuilding that trust will require more than words. It demands genuine systemic change and a demonstrable commitment to accountability.
So this isn't just about one man's actions. It's about the potential downfall of an entire system.
Precisely. And it raises a bigger question: if this level of manipulation and abuse of power could happen there, where else might it be happening unnoticed?
It's a chilling thought, but knowing this is a global issue, what can we do as individuals? Is it all on the shoulders of governments and institutions to fix?
Well, they certainly have a role to play. But change starts with awareness at every level. We need to educate ourselves about power dynamics, learn to recognize the red flags, and be willing to speak up when we see something wrong.
Right. Is that enough, though? Speaking up against powerful figures can be intimidating? Even dangerous?
It absolutely can be. That's why creating safe channels for reporting, protecting whistleblowers, and ensuring consequences for abusers are so crucial. It takes courage, but silence only allows these systems to perpetuate.
This deep dive has been more than just informative. It's been a call to action. We've unpacked the unsettling details of this scandal. But what I'm left with is a deeper understanding of power itself, how seductive it can be, how easily it can be abused, and how vital it is that we hold each other accountable.
Yeah, that's the key takeaway. The Baltasar Engonga scandal isn't just about one man or one country. It's a mirror reflecting a universal struggle between power and accountability, consent and coercion. And it's a reminder that each of us has a role to play in ensuring power is used responsibly and ethically.
This has been a sobering but essential conversation. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We encourage you to continue exploring these questions, to challenge the status quo, and to be a force for positive change in your own sphere of influence.